All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all honor, glory, and praise unto Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rakakwadash, double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone for teaching us His truth to rule well. I want to go into something real quick. All right, this is from the Wall Street Journal. Biden wants a $15 minimum wage. Here's what people say it would do to the economy. Okay, so you have Biden, okay, that one wants to send out money to families. I believe it was $1,400 per adult, and then $3,000 per child, up to 3 children. Okay, so you're potentially eligible to make $10 to $1,100 or $11,000. All right, backed up by the United States. And you know, these things that are going on, even with that, they want to increase the minimum wage. Okay, so when you go into what it could do, let me see if it has any more information down here. It says President Biden says his proposal to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour and will lift many low-wage workers out of poverty, but some businesses and economists warn it would cost jobs as the U.S. recovers from a pandemic layoffs. Okay, so basically what's going to happen is you have $15 that's going to be called the minimum wage. Okay, when minimum wage was supposed to be set for people that were, you know, recently coming out of high school and people with no experience. So now jobs are going to, if they're going to be paying you $15 just to start up, they're going to start requiring you to have some type of knowledge of that job you're trying to enter. Okay, so that means there's going to be even less jobs if there's a $15 minimum wage. Okay, that's the same thing that happened in California and in various other places. You know, so it's basically like having a gallon of milk and you being paid $1.50. You know, you're being paid $1.50 for the day, and then the gallon of milk costs 25 cents or 50 cents. Okay, at the end of the day, you're able to supply your family with food. Okay, because of the cost difference. You see, it's kind of like being paid. You know, I believe $18 is the minimum where you're on a different tax bracket, but you're not making as much as the other people on that same tax bracket. You know? So it's basically like making $1.50 a day, okay? And then a gallon of milk is 50 cents. You know, there's an equilibrium, there's a supply and there's a demand, and there's an amount that you need to be paid. Okay? So now say that, and then they lift the prices of the milk. Okay, they lift the prices from 50 cents to now $1.50, where now you're not gonna have enough. Okay, to eat like you were before. You know, if that makes any sense. That's just a similitude. You know. So as prices go up, or payment goes up, prices go up with it. Okay, and when you get to a certain point of no return, okay, this is before this one, let me go back here. This is hyperinflation. It says in economics, hyperinflation is very high and typically accelerating inflation. It quickly erodes the real value of the local currency, okay, as the prices of all goods increase. You see? So now that prices increase because of hyperinflation, what happens is eventually they'll keep increasing. And then there'll come a point where you won't be able to afford it anymore. Even a gallon of milk. You know, there was a video made last year, I believe, and brothers posted it, where you had people, or when the dollar crashed, okay, you had hyperinflation happen. You know, there was a recession, there was a depression, and the hyperinflation. And what happened was that the dollar was so worthless, okay, that the money of goods went up as well as the money that people were making, you know, to the point where they weren't even making enough, no matter how much they were making, to buy a gallon of milk. You know, so now that gallon of milk that's $10, $15 that used to be $1, okay, you're getting paid $15 an hour, but that money's so worthless that the milk just keeps going up and up, where to a point, after a week or two or a month, that now that gallon of milk is worth $50. You see, and now you're not making enough, and now your rent goes up, and that's just a gallon of milk because it's so cheap. Not to mention, insurance or vehicles, or what have you. Okay, or a house, a mortgage payment, things of that nature. So all those things are going to go up, and especially happens whenever, governments foolishly start sending money to places where, they shouldn't. Let me see if they have depression over here. I believe it was in this one. It says when the U.S. dollar collapsed. It says a dollar collapses when the value of the U.S. dollar plummets. Okay, so first you're going to go through certain scenarios, okay, and then eventually it'll plummet and it'll completely be worthless. It says in that scenario, anyone who holds dollar-denominated assets will sell them at any costs. That includes foreign governments that own U.S. treasuries. It also affects foreign exchanges, featured traders. Last but not least, it will hit individual investors. So it says when the crash occurs, these parties will demand assets dominated in anything other than the dollar. Okay, so if people ditch the dollar, what happens is the economy starts to collapse. Okay, but what we're seeing right now is the economy already collapsing, much like the Roman Empire. Okay, which I believe I had it up on this one, and it's called, go up here, the currency and collapse of the Roman Empire. Okay, it says the Roman economy, trade was vital to Rome, and that's how America has been made that great harlot, by trading its goods. Okay, by sending out its democracy and establishing itself throughout those colonies and throughout those regions of the earth. Okay, so it says trade generated vast wealth for the citizens of Rome. Okay, down here it says this made financing the pet projects of emperors challenging. It says Roman officials found a way to work around this. All right, so you had a 90% silver, which is originally the dollar of the United States was backed up by silver and gold. Okay, till eventually, it started decreasing less and less to now it being just backed up by the government. Okay, the dollar is now backed up by the governments, and if the governments dump it, then the dollar becomes more and more worthless, just like a piece of paper. Because that's basically and technically what it is, just a piece of paper, man. It says, going down here, actually it was way down here. All right, you had the collapse. It says, during the crisis of the 3rd century, there may have been more than 50 emperors. Most of these were murdered, assassinated, or killed in battle. The emperor was in a free-for-all and split into 3 separate states. Constant civil wars meant the empire's borders were vulnerable. And why were those civil wars happening? Because they realized that the government was being manipulated by higher ups. Okay, so you had a lot of people that were trying to come up against the government. All right, and that's the same thing that's happening now in America. All right, and that's why you have these laws that are being set up. Okay, so going down here, let me go up to this one. It says a recession. All right, and then it gives you a depression. So the recession is basically what we're in right now. Okay, people losing their jobs. All right, and there's a joke, I don't know if I mentioned it, but there's a joke that says a recession is when your neighbor loses his job, and a depression is when you lose your job. All right, so it's much more serious. Okay, it's a serious thing when your neighbor loses their job. Okay, but whenever you lose your job and your neighbor loses their job, it's even more serious, right? So that's what a recession and a depression basically are. So it says, And go down here. It wasn't this one, it was another one. And go back to the dollar collapsing. It says 2 conditions that could lead to a collapse. It says 2 conditions must be in place before the dollar could collapse. There must be an underlying weakness in the value of the US dollar, and there must be a viable alternative. Okay, so what is that alternative that's going to be presented? The MOB, right? It says, in other words, there must be a reason people are fleeing the dollar, that there must be somewhere for them to go. Otherwise, the dollar will remain the world's global currency. The majority of international contracts demand a dollar payment so that they adds to its stability. Okay, so right now, let me read this. Underlying weakness. The dollar is not exhibiting an underlying weakness. Between January 2008 and 2020, the dollar has strengthened by 30%, from 89.2 to 115. The coronavirus pandemic strengthened it further by 10%, rising as high as 126.4 on March 23, 2020. All right, but they're also going back to inflation or hyperinflation. It says hyperinflation has occurred in times of severe economic turmoil and depression. A depression is a prolonged period of contracting economy, meaning the growth rate is negative. A recession is typically a period of negative growth that occurs for more than 2 quarters or 6 months. Okay. So, what's happening right now is they're pumping so much money into the economy, into the system, that they're basically making nothing happen. So let me put this real quick.
A national focus or a state-by-state focus to say our economy is important and let's move it forward. The Chinese did exactly that. Part of their overall strategy was...
So what they're saying in this video is that the Chinese potentially can overtake the United States as early as 2026. Okay, but we know according to scripture that Yahweh Bashem Yahushua is going to come back before any other government would be established. So that means that before 2026, all right, potentially Yahweh Bashem Yahushua could come back. We're hoping sooner than 2026, man. But they're saying that by 2026, the Chinese would overtake, as early as 2026, the Chinese would take the United States, and being the greatest economy. Why? Because of this pandemic, which was set up by the super elites, man. They want to crash the economy. They want that to happen. Why? Because they're going to present an alternative, all right, which is going to be the world currency, the future of currency. Okay, so according to other Israelites and false, prophets, they're saying that the mark of the beast, all right, the MOB, is actually something different. Okay, which the world currency is going to be set up by something physical and tangible, all right, which is going to be that jab, the chip. It says, let me continue the video.
1, dealing with the virus, but 2, making sure they got supply chains back online, they got factories moving again, they got workers back to work. That was part of their national focus, was to say, we are not going to be set back by...
And that's another reason why they took out Donald Trump. All right. Another reason why they took him out is because he was, set up to set hope, all right, for certain people, man. He was set up to set hope for certain people. Okay. And he was doing things to better the economy of the United States. All right. And now that it was been given to back to the hand of, Sleepy Joe and so on and so forth, they're basically just going to run it to the ground, But everything was set up by the higher power, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, and it was set up that way for a reason. You see?
And we're going to keep people working. The United States and other Western countries have not done that. In fact, right now, in February of 2021, we still don't have a focus on how to get the economy back. And the idea that we're going to stimulate the economy by printing money, that does not create jobs and it does not create long-term wealth within the country or build the economy.
That's interesting that you would say that, because especially your mention at the end about printing money. Christy, I want to bring you in and talk a little bit about that, because it does seem...
Okay, and this part right here is where they go into it. But that's basically what they're doing, man. They're just printing out money, sending it to the people, hoping that they can send it back into the economy. All right. But what's happening, like the elder Ariala from the Dallas camp, and I believe it was the brother, I can't remember if it was the brother Tazama that was going into it with him. But those elder brothers were going into how what they're doing with those stimulus checks that the government is sending out is they're actually going and investing the money in businesses, okay? And they're basically crippling the economy more and more. Why? Because whenever the government gives you money, all right, for instance, tax return, okay, what do they want you to do? They want you to go spend that money back into the economy. They want you to put it back into the economy. And when people aren't doing that, and they're actually investing in other places, what it's doing is basically losing their money.
The strategy here in the United States is what you and I have in the past referred to as, jokingly, helicopter money, just flying in from everywhere that we seem to borrow that doesn't really exist, poof, out of thin air. How big of a problem is that for the U.S., and did China do any of that? Do we know?
It is a huge problem for the U.S. because the big question always is, what happens when this round of helicopter money runs out, as it always does? There really isn't any plan to actually get unemployment numbers back up, get the American jobs working again. And that has really been the big problem. And that is what China really focused on. They focused on the backbone, what Ben was saying. They focused on getting the core industries back, which was manufacturing. So China's recovery was really on the back of strong...
And talking about manufacturing, you had Donald Trump that had set up this big company here in the U.S., all right, and had said, we're going to keep it here because what they wanted to do, the higher ups, what they wanted to do was send that company out of the country. They wanted to set up that company out of the country, which means thousands and thousands of people would lose their jobs, and it would be an even bigger unemployment rate. Why? Because the people want you to lose. Okay, the people want you to lose. The people want the economy to collapse. And by the people, I'm talking about the higher up elites. Okay? They want the economy to collapse. They want people to start, starving themselves. Why? Because they want to come up in that stead, okay, and rule over the minority, which is, the 2/3 and the rest of the heathen. They want to rule over a minority, which according to the Georgia guideline stone, it's 500 million. All right.
Consumer demand staples. And that really kickstarted all the manufacturing industry when the world actually needed more masks, more gloves, paper towels, hand sanitizers, etc. So overseas demand for protective gear soared. And that's why China's exports rose 3.6% in the US in 2020, while imports fell about 1.1% in the same time. So meanwhile, China, yes, they did stimulate the economy by lowering interest rate, lowering bank holding rates and everything. But the real thing is China, they managed as a nation, like what Ben said, to contain the pandemic. And that was a lot due to its strong contact tracing program, which really allowed it to be extremely proactive in containment and quarantines. And now there are still pockets of coronavirus cases in China, especially in the last few weeks. But the very proactive approach in containing the infected individuals have definitely helped to keep the numbers down relative to the U.S.
Ben, down to about 30 seconds to a minute, but how do you increase manufacturing in the United States when our workers want to make $15 an hour, and how does that compare to what workers are making in other places, including China? How do we compete?
Yeah, well, It's not even close, right? There's no question it's not even close. But there has to be a national strategy. And by the way, love him or hate him, this is why Trump and Trumpism is popular in the United States, because Trump talked about issues that other politicians wouldn't, including where are the jobs, where did they go, and how do we bring them back here in some capacity? Listen, the United States has no chance of being able to stay ahead of China, or when we are overtaking China, if you don't have jobs. If you don't make anything, you're just a consumer nation.
Okay, so, that was, you could watch the rest. If I remember, I'll put it up in the description. All right, but going to scripture, let me actually go back to this one, Revelations 18 and verse 7. It says, how much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I said a queen, I am no widow, I shall see no sorrow. Okay, and that's how America has pushed itself to be seen as that woman that's going to just stay beautiful forever. Okay, but the fact of the matter is, it's getting worse and worse and worse. So it says, jumping down, verse 11, it says, and the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore, right? Because America, and much like the Roman Empire, what they were doing, the West versus the East, okay, the East was flourishing and the West was starting to collapse, all right, which the West was considered the actual Roman Empire. So the West was starting to collapse. Why? Because they were actually buying more than they were producing, okay, which again goes back to supply and demand. The people didn't need what Rome was producing. The people needed what was outside of Rome, okay? So they were buying what was outside of Rome, and all that money wasn't being put back into the economy. All that money was being put outside of the economy, which caused Rome to print out more money, all right, or to make more money, which became more and more worthless because it wasn't backed up by that silver or by that gold, So eventually what happened, one of the falls of the Roman Empire was the economy, Really, it was set up by the Most High, but just like everything else, you can go into a more detailed explanation on why it fell, and that's what the Most High set up, how the Most High set it up to fall, So the merchants of the earth, all right, which were made rich by Babylon the Great, which is America, okay, are going to mourn for her. Why? Because they were made rich from her, But the other nations are not going to cry for her, just the merchants. It says, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all thine wood and all manner of vessels of ivory and all manner of vessels of most precious wood and of brass and of iron and of marble and cinnamon and odors and ointments and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beasts and sheep and horses and chariots and slaves and souls of men. You see? Why? Because men are also sold into slavery, into a hard bondage, or into like Nike, for instance. I believe Nike has, young children working for them, all right, which is cheap labor for them because they don't have to really pay them anything, and then they make a killing off of America, okay, because America buys them for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So they were made rich off of America, Babylon the Great, So all our money is going outside. Not much money is coming back inside. And then they're pumping more money, okay? And again, that money's being either invested or turned, to outside of the United States. All right, so what's coming pretty soon is the destruction of Babylon the Great, and it starts with the monetary system, So now that I mentioned that, let me go back over here. Where was I? Hyperinflation. So it says the prices of goods increase that cause people to minimize their holdings in the currency as they usually switch to more foreign currencies in recent history, often the US dollar. Prices typically remain stable in terms of other relatively stable currencies. Okay, so if the dollar collapses and all these other dollars collapse, all right, what is going to be set up? the MOB. It says, unlike low inflation, where the process of rising prices is protracted and not generally noticeable except by studying past market prices, hyperinflation sees a rapid and continuing increase in nominal prices, the nominal cost of goods, and the supply of currency. All right. It says, typically, however, the general price level rises even more rapidly than the money supply as people try ridding themselves of the devaluing currency as quickly as possible. As this happens, the real stock of money, the amount of circulating money divided by the price level, decreases considerably. Okay, so when you go to supply of currency, it says in macroeconomics, the money supply or money stock in the total value of money available in the economy at a point of time. There are several ways to define money, but standards measures usually includes currency in circulation. You see, so the money here in the Americas, Babylon the Great, the United States of America, is not being circulated. All right, it's not being circulated. Whenever you're juggling, all right, with five balls, all right, if you're juggling those five balls, and then every 2 cycles you get rid of one, what you're going to end up with is 0. Okay, if that makes any sense, because that money is not being put back into the economy. So basically what they're doing is printing out more and printing out more and printing out more, and eventually there's going to come a time where the printing out of that money is useless, and there's plenty of scriptures that back that up. So it says the central bank of each country may use a definition of what constitutes money in its purpose. It says money supply data is recorded and published usually by the government or the central bank of the country. Public and private sector analysts monitor change in the money supply because of the belief that such changes affect the price levels of securities, inflation, and exchange rates. You see? So going back over here, let me see, go to causes. It says, while there can be a number of causes of high inflation, almost all hyperinflations have caused by government budget deficits financed by currency creation. You see? So that currency creation is what's happening right now. So when we go into budget deficit, deficit spending is the amount by which spending exceeds revenue over a particular period of time. Also called simply deficit or budget deficit, the opposite of budget surplus. The term may be applied to the budget of a government. Okay, so the government has a budget. Private company or individual. Government deficit spending is central point of controversy in economics as discussed below. Okay, so they're just pumping all this money out. And like that man said, that helicopter money. Okay, and eventually what's going to happen is a crash. All right, and that's getting ready to happen to set up the chip. Okay, the MOB. So let me go here. Actually, let me go back to Revelations 19 and verse 7. It says, let us be glad and rejoice and give honor to him, for the marriage of the Lamb is come, and his wife hath made herself ready. All right, so what we're supposed to be doing as men of Yahweh Shem Yahushai is getting ourselves ready, not through this money, all right, not through saving and having, a large amount of money, but through storing our treasures in heaven. Okay, let me see here. Let me read this one real quick and then I'll get that one. It says, Jeremiah 17:5, thus saith Yahweh, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, and maketh flesh his arm, whose heart departeth from Yahweh. Okay, so if your mindset is not in this truth, your mindset is not in Yahweh Shem Yahushai, you're cursed. Okay, and the curse you're going to receive is trusting in man. And by trusting in man, like Jeremiah chapter 8 says, all right, you're going to follow along him when that falleth. All right, if the blind lead the blind, they lead each other to a ditch, man. All right, and that's basically what's being set up right now, to lead you to the ditch. Okay, so your job, like it says in Revelations 19:7, all right, is to be glad and rejoice and give honor to him, for the marriage of the Lamb is come, and his wife hath made herself ready. All right, so make yourself ready in this truth. Okay, Jeremiah 17:6, it says, for she shall be like the heath in the desert, and shall not see when good cometh. All right, and that good is what? Yahweh Shem Yahushai. It says, but shall inhabit the parched places in the wilderness, and salt in a salt land, and not be inhabited. Blessed is the man that trusts, all right, that trusts in Yahweh Shem Yahushai, whose hope is Yahweh. All right, so your hope should be Yahweh Shem Yahushai. You know, and I forgot that other precept that I was trying to bring out. Maybe it was the one in Timothy. She that liveth in pleasure is dead while she liveth. Okay, but going back to Revelations 19:8, it says, and to her was granted that she should be arrayed in fine linen, clean and white, for the fine linen is the righteousness of saints. Okay, so that's what we're going to be. Store. Let's see. Salakia. Matthew 6:33. But seek ye first the kingdom of the Most High and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. And that's the same thing that happened to Solomon, right? Solomon was seeking after the heart of Yahweh Shem Yahushua, like King David, okay? And what happened? He was multiplied in the earth, okay? He had an abundance of riches, man. The same thing that happened to Job, okay? So when you store your treasures in heaven, all right, when you store your treasures in Yahweh Shem Yahushai, okay, when the time comes, those treasures are going to come down to you by way of receiving that new kingdom. Okay, I'm not talking about a physical treasure coming down and being handed to you, you know? So, let me go up here. Actually, let me go back to chapter 18 and verse 17. It says, for in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. You see? It says, and every shipmaster and all the company and ships and sailors and as many as trade by sea stood afar off, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what city is like unto this great city? Okay, and like Hebrews 13:14 says, for here we have no continuing city, but we seek one to come. Okay, which means what? Which means we're not going to be putting our trust in this place, man. Okay, if you're making a little bit of money, then that's perfect. That's good. That's your lot. That's what Yahweh Shem Yahushai had set out for you. Okay, but that does not mean we're going to put our trust in treasures or in carnal things, man. Okay, we walk by faith, man. Okay, we walk by faith and not by what we see, by sight, you know. So that was just a quick video. You know, Lord willing, I can get to it tonight. You know, if not, then I'll try and figure something out. You know, pray to Yahweh Shem Yahushai. But I hope that was edifying. With that, I want to give all honor, glory, and praise unto Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rakakwadash. Shalom to Yakim out there, and that labor in this truth and sincerity. Shalom to the Aquath. Shalom.